Thank you everyone for joining this webinar. As Azhar mentioned, entrepreneurship has been a passion for me since a long time. In fact, when I started my first company, I faced tremendous difficulties. And so other than starting companies, when I was in Parliament for 20 years, I went on to try to do whatever I could to go and help change the policies in Singapore so that entrepreneurship can become better. Today I teach in the university. All right, so I'm going to go straight to my presentation. Let me just make sure everyone can see this. Okay, can all see this? Okay, good. All right, so thank you. Yeah. So the topic here is surviving the changing world, and the world is indeed changing. And then, what can we expect to see that's coming ahead? And what can we do, to adapt and to thrive in this world? And I always believe, entrepreneurial mindset is something that can allow us to do very well. Not just when you start companies, but in anything that you do in life. You may work in a company, maybe a civil servant, you may be in government, and entrepreneurial mindset makes a lot of difference on how you can achieve many things. All right. So I thought what would be useful for me to do is to go through this flow to talk about what are all the disruptions that we are facing today. And I think it's important because many people go away with the thinking that the pandemic hit us, and then, that is the cause of the disruption around the world. It is far from the truth. There are many disruptions that have already been happening. A pandemic is one of them, and then there are more that are going to come. So I'll talk about, the kind of disruptions that are coming. The other thing that has been happening over a long period of time, there are mega trends. The world is changing, and there are some trends like climate change and demographics and so on. The world has been changing, and then these disruptions have been, affecting this changing world. And then I just put together a few things that I see that will be opportunities in the new normal. As an entrepreneur, I always feel that every challenge presents new opportunities. And as I go through, I'll talk about it. I started a number of companies, and all of them were started in very challenging times. People thought it cannot be done, and I did it. So I'll talk about what are the future opportunities, and for each one of us, look at what is out there that one day we can benefit from. And finally, I'll talk about developing an entrepreneurial mindset. A lot of this is from the book that I had published, capturing my experiences and talk about entrepreneurship, how to develop entrepreneurial mindset, and how you can, you have an idea how do you go about starting a company. In fact, if you look at my backdrop, that's the book that I'm talking about. All right. So let me. Okay, so I'll start with the first one. And now the first disruption that we have been seeing, this has been happening since the turn of the 21st century, Industry 4.0. While this started as a reference to what's happening in the manufacturing world, but actually it's also described how the world has been transformed as a result of technology. Now, what is Industry 4.0? I'll not spend so much time on this, but the world has seen 4 industrial revolutions, starting with the invention of the steam engine. The steam engine allowed mechanization of industry. So the industrial revolution started at that point of time. And then at the start of the 20th century, electricity was discovered, and that now electrified production floors. So that's the era of mass production. The third industrial revolution happened because of ICT. Electronics and information technology transformed automation, programmable computers. All of these came about at the start of 1970s onwards. And then came today, Industry 4.0. This is basically a combination of what is happening in the cyber world, in the physical world, and also biological system. That means we as humans are part of this system. So this, in a nutshell, is how Industry 4.0 looks like and how we have transformed from one to the other. Every time when an industrial revolution came, everyone expected we will see turmoil, job losses, and we will see a lot of problem. But the good news is from Industry 1.0 to 3.0, world became better and better. All right, so but Industry 4.0, we think is going to get worse. Jury is out there, but history says that it's not that bad. All right. Now, if you look at this, these are called contractive curves. The person who invented this is, his name is contractive. This shows, again, since the time of mechanization, when the steam engine was discovered, the first wave of innovation in 1785, and then came the second wave, the third wave, the fourth wave. The one thing I want you to see from this is that over a period of time, this curve is getting narrower and narrower. What it means, maybe in the first portion, the technology lasted 80 years. In the second instance, 50 years. But in the current era, a new technology may be invented today. In 10 to 15 years, it may become obsolete. All right, so this is the pace at which we are seeing changes, and therefore, driving the changes in Industry 4.0. All right, and what are the technologies that are driving it? I've captured here. I'm not going to go through every one of them. Things like 3D printing, cybersecurity, cloud computing. These are just some of them, and there are many more new technologies that are still not out there that will come and affect all of us. So these are the kind of things that we need to look out for. That already started at the turn of the century, that have causing Industry 4.0 to happen. All right. Now it can be defined. You can read this down here. I will not go through everything. It's an interoperability between humans and machines. In fact, we are going to be part of machines. Machines are going to be part of us. We have to accept this fact. Whether it's robots, AI, we are already seeing this happening. All right. And then visualization and simulation, real-time changes, data, modularity, service orientation versus product orientation. All right. In the past, we sell products and it could be big. Today, when you sell a service, you become a lot more bigger. If you can convert your product to a service, you become very successful. Now, just one example. This of the impact of Industry 4.0. This is what we call lights out manufacturing. What lights out means is that there's no human. If you look at it, can you spot a human down here? The car, this is a car manufacturing line, and that is another manufacturer. You actually can't see humans on the floor. All is at a control center somewhere. There's just maybe one or two humans around. But this is how the Industry 4.0 is going to do, not just in manufacturing, but in every aspect of our lives. All right. Now, the second type of disruption that we are seeing is what I call deglobalization. Now, we know what globalization is. Many countries like Singapore benefited from globalization because we had access to global markets. But now we are seeing a reverse of globalization, so deglobalization. This chart simply says, this is the income of the global population. So if you look at the 5% and below, the poorest were locked out of growth in the period of 1988 to 2008. The poor people remain poor. Then if you look at the point from after 5% to up to 65%, the income rise was very high, 60%, 70%. But this was driven by the rise of China. So the people in China experienced income growth that was really good. So they were very happy. But then if you look at the next, between 65% to 85%, the middle class of today, and who are these people? These are the Americans, the Europeans, Singaporeans. Many of our middle class actually have seen real income decline below the zero line. Then you look at the last 1%, the richest in the world became exponentially rich. So what this says is that growth and globalization has resulted in uninclusive growth, and it's caused by a number of reasons. So what was the impact of this? This is a very interesting survey, a question done globally, asking the population, one simple question, is the world getting better or worse? And the answer here was more than 50% of the global population said that the world is getting worse. The one country that says the world is getting better is China, the people of China. And you can understand why, because their income rose. Indonesia also rising, developing countries' income is rising. Now you go down, look at France, look at Australia, Hong Kong, Malaysia, and all the countries, including Singapore. The majority of the population say that the world is getting worse. When they say this, they don't want to embrace globalization, and therefore the reverse. What had happened, if you look at it now, correlate this to the events in the world, there were many riots in Russia, in France, in Hong Kong there were riots. In Malaysia, the longest serving government lost to Pakatan Harapan PH. In Great Britain, in UK, Brexit happens. US, they elected a very funny man, Trump, as a president. And Thailand, there were unrest. Singapore and Australia are also, population says it's getting worse, but nothing happened. These are special countries. People still tolerate them, all right? Now, because of this, there are lots of changes that are going to happen. And this is a very interesting book. If you have time, you can read it. This author talks about how there is a rise of nationalism and populism, simply because the people in the middle income countries felt that they are getting worse and not better off. All right, when this happens, there will be many protests, and therefore the word revolt. There's an uprising against globalization. So that's deglobalization, the second disruption. Now, the third thing that's happening is a changing world order. Now, this term was actually invented by Ray Diallo. If you have time, look up for this, and he's got very interesting, it's a long video, talks about how the world order changes. So there was 500 years ago, the Dutch were dominating the world. Then came the British Empire, and then the Dutch declined. Then came in fact, Dutch, I will say Europe, okay? Then the British, and then came the American, and they're declining, and guess who's rising? China. If you look at the intersection of those things, there were wars, right? There were wars. And now, if you look at the projection, will we see a potential war? Because US may be declining and China may be rising, all right? Now, this is a typical thing that happens in this change of the world order. A new order comes as peace and prosperity and productivity increase. Then there's a financial bubble collapse, financial system collapse, and then the new world order takes, and it repeats and repeats and repeats. So China has been going through peace, prosperity, and productivity. They are rising. Economy is faltering. I don't think so. That's the end. They probably will rise some more. But over the long term, maybe a new world order will happen. So this is the third thing that's happening now here. All right. The fourth disruption that came about was the COVID. All right. The COVID started with a health emergency, became a serious economic disruption, impact how we live, impact how we do work, impact our jobs, impact businesses. And this will not go away. Things that we learned to do during the COVID are going to stay with us. Most of the world has found new ways of doing things. So I don't think so we'll ever go back to the old. There'll be a new normal. All right. Now, so as you can see, it's not just technology. There are many disruptions that are affecting the world. Now, these mega trends are also things that are going on, have been going on, and will continue to hit us. Global warming, I think the world is talking about it. Really, we have not made much progress here, but it's important that we do. Demographic shifts. The world is changing in terms of how they look in different parts of the world. Urbanization is happening very fast, and there's a shift of economic power. And what else? There are other things that will come. So we should not rest on our laurels that, that's all. There'll be more things, and we have to be prepared. All right. Now, why are we facing this crisis of climate change, resource accessibility? Because of climate, biodiversity loss, deforestation, pollution, all these have been caused by all of us, all right, over the years. And so this is why we are facing a crisis today. And if you look at the demand of the global population for food, for water, and for energy, it's going to, from 2016 and 2020, by the way, just 7 years away, 35% demand increase in food, 40% water, and 50% in energy. And guess what? There is only 3% of the world's water is fresh water. And of this 3%, only 25% is accessible. Right? So that's another area where we can see conflicts when you cannot get clean water. All right. The third area is, of course, the rise of temperature will make some parts of the world uninhabitable. All right. So we are going to see this. So that's climate change. Second is a big shift in demography. All right. So what's happening is by 2030, 2/3 of the world middle class will be living in Asia. All right. China is becoming rich. India is next. And this alone is about 2 billion people. And the next one is going to be Africa, and I'll share that in a while. And the payment habits of millennials are changing in the developed countries. By 2050, 21% of the population is going to be above 60 years old. So aging population. All right. And guess what? 90% of the young people between the age of 24, 90% live in less developed countries. All right. Now, then if you look at countries like Japan, Japan is a very good indicator for countries like Singapore. I put down here the demography of the population from 1950 all the way to 2050 projection, and then to the 2010 projection. Guess what? A big pyramid of young people to support a few old people. You go to just 2050. Let's now look at the turn of the century. There's going to be more older people than younger people, and guess what? Who's going to support them? Look at Singapore. This is a Singapore in 1950, 2015, and 2050. Same thing like Japan. So this is another thing that we have to think about. There will be new challenges, but there will also be new opportunities in the graying economy. Silver industries, for example. Right? Now, the other thing is this shift of population into urbanize. You're going to move more and more people move to urban areas, cities. All right. In 1990, there were only 10 megacities. Megacities are those with a population of 10 million and more. By 2010, there were 23 megacities. By 2030, just 7 years more, there will be 43 megacities. All right, and about 730 million people will be staying in megacities. Then there are others staying in cities also. So this is another big change and create challenges and also opportunities. The next mega trend is the shifting economic power. If you look at on the right side, rather let's look on the left. China from 2016 to 2030 is going to see economic growth contribution to the world GDP from 18% to 20%, just 2% increase. When you look at India on the right, is 7% 2016 is going to go to 15% 2030. Of course, India rise looks bigger than China, but because China has already risen in the last 20 to 25 years. So India is now going to catch up. But then you look at the two center continents. US is going to go from 16% to 12%, and Europe is going to, the 27 countries, Europe going to drop from 15 to 9%. So this basically shows that where the economic powers of the world are going to be. And when you have economic power, you have power in many other areas. All right. And also in many of these developing countries, this also includes not just India, China, but Africa. There are huge resources. There are lots of opportunities and a huge opportunity for growth. But one thing is for sure, between China and India, the shift of power will shift toward this part of the world. In fact, maybe 200 years ago, 50% of the world GDP was driven by India and China. Today it's very low, but that is going to be an era that's going to come back again. All right. Now, what else is coming? So we have seen this Ukraine war. Maybe the question we should ask, why did it happen? Who is to be blamed and who will win? No one knows yet, right? The thing is so balanced right now. But what is important is to ask this question, was it a pattern as the world order changes? Remember, I showed you the intersection of the changes of world order, what wars happen. We have to be prepared. I think we cannot think that nothing is going to happen. So I looked at some of the data that's been published around, and I put some things together here. So in just this year, March 2029, President Xi Jinping from China says that he's preparing for war, as published in the Foreign Affairs article magazine there. At the annual meeting in Parliament, he advised his top political advisory body. He advised them and he told his generals to be prepared and dare to fight. All right. So this is, he said it a few times, by the way. This is just one occasion. Then on the other side, you look in the US, a leaked memo from a US 4-star general says that his gut told him that they will be at war with China in 2025. All right. And of course, center of conflict, could be Taiwan. Now, of course, if you look at the budget, defense spending, the year 2024 budget, which has been approved by their government, is 842 billion, which is a record in terms of defense spending. So all these indications do tell us that we have to be worried. We must hope that it does not happen, but it is not a given that it's not going to happen. All right. So having put the background, it looks a bit, maybe depressing, but I think it's important for us to know the kind of world that we are facing, so that we can then prepare for what's coming forward. So what I did was I looked at the impact of some of these things, and then projected of what should we be prepared for. All right, and I'm going to talk about these 7 new normals that we should be prepared. Digitization of all businesses, climate change, future of education and work, innovation, rise of Southeast Asia, which is important for all of us here, and the rise of the virtual economy. All right, so I'll go through one by one. Now, if you look at this, what can you tell from this picture? Okay, normally in my class, when I teach, I ask a question, and some students have problem answering. But from 2009 to 2019, what happened was helicopter pilot and the cameraman lost their job and was replaced by a drone. So this is the impact of AI and technology and IT. All right, so they lost their job. Now, this is a very interesting research done by Oxford University, the Institute of Future of Humanity Institute, done in 2017. What they did was they studied about 800 over jobs to look at the probability of this job or activity being disrupted. So you just look on the right-hand side, and this is to be caused by technology, AI, and so on. If you look on the right-hand side, the projection was the telemarketers, the probability of the telemarketer job going away is 99%. And guess what? It's already happening because today, text to voice conversion, you don't need people to do telemarketing. Machines are capable of doing a very good job. In fact, you can interview a robot and robot can actually have a better conversation than all of us can have. But more worrying is you look at the second from bottom, auditors and accountants. Many students may be doing these courses. The probability of this job being eliminated is 94%. Guess what? All our financial data is in computers today. AI and all the algorithms are able to analyze and present the financial reports, do the auditing by themselves. You don't need human intervention. So accountants, as lawyers, somewhere up there, especially, entry-level lawyers who do a lot of research, they have the potential of their jobs getting disrupted. All right, but for those of you who are studying accountancy, don't despair. Universities like NTU and all around the world are not just teaching pure accountancy, they are teaching accountancy, data analytics, and so on. So we are strengthening our courses in the university so that people, you don't feel that you don't have a future of opportunity. I want to go a bit more. Commercial pilot, 55% probability that commercial pilot jobs can be eliminated. Actually, today when the plane is in cruising altitude, the plane is flying by itself, autopilot. Why can't the landing and takeoff be taken? I think with 5G technology, the plane will be able to communicate on the ground and you don't need a pilot to land the plane. So of course, if you don't want to lose a job, then you can be a clergy and become a priest. Okay, you can see down there 0.08% or some of the other careers on there. So this again, AI technology, it can disrupt many jobs. Now, will digitization go away? This chart is very interesting. If you look at the blue box was how the country shifted to digitization, went online and all those things. In just 1 year, 2019 to 2020 in UK, the adoption of digital technology went by 4.5 times. And if you compare that to 4 years, 2015 and 2019, the black box, it was only 1.3 factor versus 5.7. So it went up 4.5 times. In Japan, it went up 1.8 times. In fact, I was told by many people who know Japan that Japan, the rate at which in 1 year they went to digitize at the population level would only happen in 10 years if the pandemic did not. So this has happened and it's going to continue to drive the changes around the world. So digitization is an opportunity. All right. Climate change. What can we do? We have to reimagine our relationship with the planet. We have to rethink how we do things. And of course, what has been damaged, we have to rebuild those things. Right? So I think we want to do this. We have to do this to create a sustainable future for future generations. All right. And so we have to respect the planet, natural system, biodiversity. So for deforestation, burning of jungle, waste, the way we treat waste without recycling. We have to do many things to go and redo what we used to do so that we can save the world. But what else can we do? We can embrace a circular economy model, redesign our cities for people and not cars, which is happening in many places. Rethink our relationship with nature, protecting ecosystem, promoting biodiversity, and sustainable farming practices. Now, of course, farming is not important in Singapore, but it's important in many parts around the region. But still, in Singapore, we are going towards urban farming. And so we could play a part also down here on how to have sustainable urban farming. All right. And what is circular economy? Is based on principle of designing out waste and pollution, keeping products and material in use as long as possible, reuse them, and regenerating natural systems. So this is circular economy that I see tremendous opportunities for any one of us who want to get into this area as a business. What are some examples? Product as a service. Rather than selling a product, so cloud, for example. In the past, you want a software, you used to buy a disk and you used to get a software. Today it's on cloud. Software as a service. Closed loop supply system. Sharing economy. So for example, Uber, Grab, Airbnb, these are sharing economies. These are platforms that allow us to share. Recycling and composting. So as you can see, there are many things that we can do that this is within our control. As entrepreneurs, you design your future business model, look at some of these things. All right. And of course, as companies and as the rest of us, we need to rethink our approach in managing global organization. All right. Many countries are obsessed by GDP growth. Everyone in Singapore, in fact, most of the time, but every other country is chasing GDP growth. But I think they need to go from GDP to environmental sustainability, social justice, and quality of life. Not just cost of living, but quality of life. All right. We need more collaborative and equitable system. Instead of winner takes all mental, I must win and I must beat the other person. Therefore, we go all out and destroy the place. Collaborate more, cooperate more, have equity sharing with everyone. So I think there are many ways of doing this: worker cooperative, participative democracies, community-based decision-making at the political level. But in companies, you actually can get participation and people to have ownership by doing this. And of course, there's a lot that we can do in education and awareness, climate change, social justice, sustainability, and also promoting critical thinking and problem-solving skills so that we can solve some of these problems. And I'll share a bit about this later on future of education. All right. So to rebuild a sustainable future, we need many things: carbon emission, invest in renewable energy, preserve natural resources, invest in green infrastructure. All right. Green roofs, rain gardens, create more sustainable food system. In fact, today, if you look at the Straits Times today, our newspaper, the Labour Party in the UK, they think they will be government at the next round, is talking about how they want to go into renewable energy by, I think it's about 20 years or so. It's a very ambitious goal. Norway, I think today about 60% of their cars are EV cars. All right, EV cars. And a few years ago, I was there. It was less than that. They had an implied, goal of reaching 100% by a certain year. I can't remember when, but they're already about 60% of all their cars are EV. China wants to stop selling diesel or petrol cars by 2030, I think, and then everyone will shift to EV. So it's interesting. There are many countries that are already doing it. There are many ways of doing it, and I think we all should be part of it. All right. So we must look ways how to reimagine our relationship with the planet, rethink our approach, how we do things, including business, and rebuild what we have already damaged. And this hopefully can help us create a good future for our future generations. Now, third area is, of course, education. And what are the skills of the future? There's going to be a big change. And I think those of you who are students, you want to be prepared that, this old model of getting your education, 12 years in school, 3 or 4 years in the university, having a career and then retiring, that's gone already. In fact, by now, even my generation, I'm seeing it, future generation, that 3-stage career path is no longer down there. So you must be able to take initiative, communicate and collaborate, and requires mindset change if you want to have a change from this. All right. So we should be prepared that each one of us will have different careers at different parts of our life as we progress in life. All right. And we therefore must pace our working life so that we don't burn out and then we don't know how to go and work for a longer period of time in a different area. Learn, unlearn, relearn. I think this summer, with those of you in Singapore, you've been hearing this mantra for many years. I think that is a reality, not just for Singapore, but the rest of the world. Okay, so this work alone may not be able to sustain the livelihood moving forward. So therefore, continuous learning, continuous knowledge acquisition, being flexible, adaptive, and creative, these are all important. But what do we teach in school? Now, when we go to our education system, let's say the university, because I was part of the board of trustees of NTU, the way we planned our curriculum in the universities was like this. The government spends about 1 to 2 years to look at how the world is going to change and how Singapore is changed and what kind of industries we want to bring in. Then they identify certain areas that the universities should develop as a curriculum. So for example, photonics is important for the next 20 years. Then the university spend another 1 to 2 years planning the curriculum. So we release this and the students come in, they spend 4 years in engineering and then they graduate. So 8 years later, photonics may get obsolete. If you look at my quadratic curves I showed earlier, that actually will not work for us anymore. So we have to rethink about how we develop curriculums in the university so that you develop fundamental knowledge and capabilities that will allow you to learn new things, not just the one thing that the government thought that we all should learn. All right. So we must be flexible, adaptive, and creative. All right. So we have to go from the old method of teaching to new method of learning. So instead of thinking whether you're college or university ready, you should think whether are you innovation ready, because you're going to have to innovate throughout your whole life. AI, ChatGPT, BART, I use those nowadays to help me do some research. Lots of this out there. So knowledge is going to come at the fingertip. It was already there with Google, but this is going to get a lot more better with ChatGPT, right? So more important to know what you can do with what you know. Knowledge is there. What are you going to do with it? That's more important. And you're not going to be able to learn this from anywhere else. You have to develop that capabilities yourself. So beyond basic knowledge, photonics, or simple skills, you need skills, motivation, and capacity to innovate. Solving problem creatively. Now I'm leading towards, this all leads toward thinking entrepreneurially. Right? Skills like critical thinking, communication, and collaboration going to be more important than subject knowledge, because subject you can get it very easily from all this ChatGPT and so on. So ability to think and take initiative is the way to go, and this requires a mindset change, an entrepreneurial mindset. Young people who are interested, motivated, curious, persistent, and willing to take risks will learn new knowledge and skill continuously. So I would say no matter at what stage of your life you are, think like young people, all right? They learn very fast and they are willing to adapt a lot more quickly, right? Now, we worry about whether AI is going to take away our jobs. So far, if let's say they can, then what are we going to be useful for? This is something that we have to think about. There is a book, on the 21 challenges of the 21st century, and also the same author wrote, Homo Deus, talked about there is going to come a time when humans will become useless. In fact, this author says that actually today, Facebook and Google are collecting so much of data about our Instagram and so on, that Facebook, Google, and all these tech companies know us better than we know ourselves. And the author basically put in this point that the machines will be able to do a better job in choosing a spouse for you and me than we can choose. We make mistake. Whereas there's so much of information about us that when they match, it will be probably a better match. So machines can do a better job in choosing your spouse. Think about it. But there are still some engineering bottlenecks. I'm an engineer by training, so there are some things that robots are also not ready. Finger dexterity, manual dexterity, can workspace, awkward position, and so on. Creative intelligence, fine arts, originality, social intelligence. All right. These engineering bottlenecks will limit how far AI can go until this can be overcome. There's no guarantee that this will never be overcome, but at least for some time, it's not. Now, AI has got 4 stages. Singularity is when they can do everything that we can do and better, and then that's the end of all of us. But I think we're still some way from that. Now, these are some data that came out. I think these were from World Economic Forum. What are the fastest growing jobs in the world? Artificial intelligence and machine learning specialists. So those of you who are contemplating career, look at these things. Sustainability experts. So I talk about climate change. It's a huge opportunity out there. Business intelligence analysts, so data analytics, information security. When you have everything online, you also have lots of cybersecurity scams and so on, right? Fintech and so on. You can read the rest. Digital transformation specialists, and the skills that you need to acquire in school. And so the universities and the schools have to learn about how to teach these things. Not easy. Analytical thinking, creative thinking, resilience, flexibility, motivation, curiosity, technological literacy, because you're going to have to learn new things all along, and so on, leadership, and so on and so forth, communication. So these are the kind of skills that actually some of the universities are already trying to do. So for example, you have project presentation in our JCs, right? The idea is to develop some of the skills. And so more and more, the universities have to start thinking about how can they add this as part of the journey, for education. So this is going to be the new normal for education. What about for work? Now, when the pandemic hit, we had to start working from home when we all face a lockdown around the world. I can tell you this, that many of the older workers felt that it's impossible. It cannot be done. And I faced it myself in my company down here. We've got some people who are older, who are so used to what they're doing, and they told us that the management, no, we cannot be done. It's impossible. We won't be able to do it. But we had to force ourselves to take that lockdown, otherwise we will be in trouble with the authorities. So we locked down, and lo and behold, for that 2 months when Singapore was locked down, everyone could do the job. We did not lose so much of productivity. In fact, we became more productive. We saved on travel time and in lunch time and so on. People were just doing their work at home. So I think, this is going to be a big change that's coming our way. And, working from home is one of them, right? But also, it's going to be the future employee is going to look a bit different from the past, all right? First of all, flexible work environment, whether you work from home or in office. This gives you an advantage of personal control. But the disadvantage is going to be you're not going to be able to delineate between home and work. And this has actually created maybe a bit more burnout for people who start. They work a lot harder when they were at home. All right. The advantages of customizing your own work, you become an expert in your own work, a better pay and linear programming, you're an expert. All right. But because you are away, and you are not doing what has been prescribed, less job security. Now, I'm not going to go through everything. So same thing in terms of information sharing, in terms of ability to communicate, when yourself and communicate with outside, ability to become a leader, knowledge, and then learn and teach at will. You higher productivity, but loss of synergy for companies, for bosses, for example. Everyone is doing their own expert areas, but then there's no more synergy, and I cannot control anymore. It may not be something that at the end we want also. So there are advantages and disadvantages, but this is going to be the new normal for work in the future. But I think more importantly is that who's going to define that work for you? What is that work going to look like, right? So therefore, from work, I think many of us will have to start looking at creating our own opportunities. So I'm again thinking about how you can be entrepreneurial, not just to start companies, but to start projects in a company, right? So finding job, I would say, is last generation. Inventing a job is going to be the future. With Industry 4.0, as we have seen, no such thing as a high-wage, middle-skill job. It's going to be gone, right? The helicopter pilot and the cameraman, remember? Gone, right? So a high-wage, high-skill jobs may emerge, but will be very few, very few. And given the pace of change, we have to continue to reinvent, re-engineer, reimagine, and add new value, all right? It's not going to be equitable. Those without mindset, passion, and purpose may suffer. Those who are able to adapt and have that kind of mindset, they will benefit, they'll grow. And as you can see, the top 1% of the world, they are the tech people, they are the business people who control the companies and big companies, and look at how rich they become, right? It's not equitable. But those who have that kind of mindset, they will benefit. But those who refuse to change, they will not. And so, failing everything else, join the gig economy or lie flat. Lie flat is a term, there's a term in Chinese, I can't remember the name, but means that they just give up and do nothing. Either do nothing or you can join the gig economy if you cannot find a job. So you can create your job, you can create your companies, you're going to be an entrepreneur, but if you're an employee, there is a way out, entrepreneurship. Go down there and solve problems that will not be typically solved by the typical employee. All right, so this is going to be the future of work. Now, the fifth area that we have to be prepared is innovation. The world is going to look at innovation, and it's not just US, it's not just China, it is not just ABC part of the world, it is every part of the world, all right? So I gave a talk in 2013, I went to the United Nations to talk about economic development through entrepreneurship. And I met people from Australia to Angola. I met people from Zimbabwe to USA. And all of these countries were talking about the same thing, entrepreneurial economy, innovation, and so on. So this is going to be a very important thing for all of us to see how can we create a future economy and how to be active participant in the area of innovation. I've shown down here the 2021, there's a global ranking, Global Innovation Index, GIS Global Innovation Index for 2021. The 2022 results are also, but I'm just using this right now. Now, if you look at it, there are two ways of measuring success in innovation. One is how much money I spend, how many buildings I built, how many people I put to it. That's all input factors. Then the other way of measuring innovation, how successful have we been? So if you look at Singapore, I've kind of put that in red. We did fantastic in institutions. We're number 1 in the world in institutions. In market sophistication, we're number 5 in the world. And in business sophistication, we're number 3 in the world. But when you look at knowledge output and creative output, compared to all of those on the top 10, we are last. Knowledge and technology output, number 13, second last. Output, creative output, we're number 17, we're last among this batch of people. So it's important that when we look at innovation, we also look at what is the output we're going to create and how we're going to do that. So this is a challenge, but also an opportunity for each one of us as we participate. I share this chart down here. Look at Czech Republic. They are 24th in terms of the overall ranking, but then the output is better than the output that Singapore generates. Right? So Czech did better. Singapore is on the right, should be on the left of the chart, where it's more output better, but Czech Republic does better than Singapore. So in Singapore and many other countries, and even for each one of us, we have to think about when we do innovation, what creative outputs we're going to create. They're going to create success for us, for our companies, for our country. Right? Now, the other big shift that's happening, and this targeting to our students and audience who's from this part, Southeast Asia, is that we are seeing a revolution going on in Southeast Asia. All right, rise of Southeast Asia is very rapid right now. Of course, Asia rise is quite clear. You can see from the left, US, China by 2024 next year is supposed to overtake US in terms of the size of the GDP, but may slow down because China is facing problems right now. But anyway, China will overtake US. But look at India. India is going to be number 3. And look at Indonesia. Indonesia was nowhere. It is now come up down there, number 5 in the world in terms of a contribution to the GDP. Then I just took the Southeast Asia, look at Indonesia's economy. All right, GDP, Thailand, Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Singapore, and so on. All right. So this is a big thing that's happening down. And I visited cities in Indonesia, cities in Thailand, cities in Vietnam, and the innovation ecosystem that is vibrant. Young people and companies are being started, investments are happening, and lots of jobs are being created. My point is that the whole of Southeast Asia is now undergoing a revolution. It's not just Singapore, but the whole of this region. Soon after Myanmar achieves stability, they will be there. Malaysia has political issues. When they settle, they will grow. Philippines, by the way, also coming quite far. So it's going to be a very exciting place. I will not go through the detail. This shows from 2010 the amount of funding and number of investments that have gone to fund startups in this place at different levels. All right. So 2023 saw a record number of companies being funded in Southeast Asia. All right. Now, the question then for Singapore, and I always, being a former politician, I always ask this question: how can Singapore benefit from this? What should we do? Because we are a small economy, we depend on the world. We should be looking at whether we can support, this as the hinterland. This can be our hinterland for our companies that can actually create, value for these countries. And I wrote a paper about this during the pandemic, that Singapore could become the prototyping and initial manufacturing factory of the world. We have lots of technology in our universities that's not going out to the industry. We can prototype, show that it can be done, and be the center of technology transfer so that manufacturing can happen in any part of the world. This way, we can actually supply the control chain. So Southeast Asia is going to grow. We all in Singapore need to find our role in Southeast Asia. And if we can do this correctly, there's a lot of future for us, not just future jobs here, but also to participate in the growth in the region. All right. And what roles can we play, and what could be the advantages for Singapore? Cost. Singapore is expensive. In fact, yesterday or today, a report came out, Singapore is the most expensive city in the world. How are we going to do business in an expensive city in the world? Well, we got a hinterland that's cheaper, right? So we must look at it bigger than Singapore. We can co-develop the region so we benefit, the region benefits. And when the region prospers, all of us will be happy. It's a captive market. Southeast Asia is 500 million of people. That's a big market for us. We don't have to go very far. Connectivity, Singapore is the most well-connected globally, but also, of course, in Southeast Asia. And finally, if let's say you're based in Singapore and you develop technology that's going to go, the world has confidence. A Singapore brand carries a lot. So if you look at all of this, Southeast Asia is booming. Many of us from Singapore can play a part if we can go and participate in it through some of these things that I just mentioned. Now, the final thing on the new normal is the virtual economy. So 1970s was driven by mainframe computers, huge computers. 1980 by personal computers. 1990s by internet. 2000 by social media. 2010 by crypto, Bitcoin, which is facing a lot of problems right now. What about 2020s and above? Well, metaverse. All right. Or we can talk about the metaverse by itself today doesn't look like real, but this is going to come because there are few technologies that are going to enable. One is blockchain, which is the center of the whole cryptocurrency. cryptocurrency itself, that means decentralized currencies, NFTs, right? Non-fungible token. These are some of the enablers that will drive the metaverse one day, all right? By 2030, we can see higher education can be done on metaverse. When the pandemic hit, I started teaching my master's course online. Job training may be provided by 3D virtual setting, use of AI and GPT, boardroom and workspace meeting, and so on. But what about 2030? Brain-computer interface will enable humans' thought to be tracked and recorded and shared. For example, I can experience moments and memories from someone else. I have a predecessor. If the memories are recorded, and I then implant to my brain, I actually will be able to experience that. So this kind of things that can happen. Synthetic data generated from simulated worlds, guide robots to problem solve and replace humans performing, and many more. So I would say metaverse, don't write it off. Cryptocurrency, don't write it off. There are lots of opportunities. Now, with all of these opportunities down there, how can you tap this thing? So this is now my last part of my speech and about developing an entrepreneurial mindset. I wrote a book called The Art and Science of Entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship is indeed two things. Art, the human elements. It's about your mindset. It's about your mantra. It's about the culture. It's about philosophy and values and so on. All right? What you believe in, that's an art. You cannot, it's very abstract. So therefore art. But it's also a science. I have an idea. How do I transform this idea into a business model? And how do I bring this business model to create a company? And how do I run a company? So it's also a science. And so this is the reason why I wrote the book, to talk about these two things, because many people mistaken entrepreneurship is just about starting companies. I believe entrepreneurship is all about developing a mindset. All right. And the best entrepreneur I associate with is our founding Prime Minister of Singapore, Lee Kuan Yew. He founded a country and made it into such a successful venture. And look at it. So they were starting something from scratch and they created. So you can think like one, no matter what you do in life. All right. So it's more than creating companies. And one of the principles I believe, and I operated the whole of my life, whether in school or wherever I work in a multinational company or my startup, I believe that there's no problem in the world that cannot be solved. Every problem that you face can be solved. Outcome may be a bit different from what you think, but every problem can be solved. And this is a mindset that we must develop. Now, people say entrepreneurship is about taking risks. It is not just taking blind risks, but it's a calculated. You know the risks are there. You calculate, you mitigate, and you move. Versus people who don't move unless all the risks are clear. Then you never start. You'll never be an entrepreneur. All right. About seeing opportunities when others see failures. It's about nature versus nature. Believe that it can be nurtured. Many people believe that you're born. I don't believe in that. I believe that we can train, we can nurture the environment, we can help to create. And also there are two important things, creativity and innovativeness. Applies to entrepreneurs, applies to entrepreneurs, and applies to each one of us. Let me differentiate creativity and innovation because there's a lot of confusion about this. All right. Now, before that, there are many definitions. You go to dictionaries on entrepreneurship. I actually created my own definition. All right. And I put it in my book. An entrepreneur identifies a problem, uses innovative ways to solve a problem, and creates new opportunities using limited resources to create something valuable and meaningful to society. Now, put yourself as an entrepreneur starting a company. Use this. You are starting meaningful. You're starting a company that's useful to your customers. Or you're solving a government problem. Put yourself down here. You're going to solve a problem that people face. And so in anything that you do, you apply this. It's a universal definition. All right. And entrepreneurship, it's about behaving like entrepreneur in a company. And in my book, if you have time to read it, I talked about how I created a 230 million US business from scrap that we used to throw away, zero, 230 million at 90% profit margin. So I was working for someone, but I still thought like an entrepreneur, and I created something that's very innovative that helped the company create extra revenue and profits. All right. So it's about how you think, whether the cup is half full or half empty, whether this will fail or this will work. It's about being optimistic or pessimistic. So entrepreneurs see opportunities when others see failures. And this is where, when I started my first company in 1997, 98, it was right in the middle of the Asian financial crisis. And the semiconductor industry, which I started a technology company, semiconductor company, I wanted to start at that time. Many people thought I was crazy because the industry was doing very badly and bleeding. But I saw an opportunity for the future. And against all odds, I raised $138 million US, which was a record of thought at that time. And I started UTech, United Test and Assembly Center, still running, Singapore-based company. And in 3 years, actually, I got Nasdaq listing approval valued at 2 billion. So that was my first unicorn. Created by 2001, that company became a unicorn, 3 years. So my point is that many people thought I was crazy, it's not possible. I created the possibility. All right, so it's how you think. All right. So to understand about entrepreneurship thinking, you need to ask this question. When you look at an entrepreneur, what traits do they display? How do they behave? What is their mindset? And why do they do what they do? If you can analyze this, then I think you can also then try to emulate and become one. So I have solved this problem by actually writing that in the first section of 7 chapters on the art of entrepreneurship. What I did was I have distilled. When we learn in school, we say I learn theory, I want to put into practice. What I did in my book was I put all my practice of successful entrepreneur, and I created theories out of it. So you then can read down there, and I have many examples. So you can actually now learn about some of these things that people say cannot be learned. All right. So ability to solve problems, thinking out about, experiment, do things different, be flexible, adaptable, seize opportunities. And guess what? Any one of us can do this. All right. So each one of us can think like an entrepreneur. Some factors that affect the entrepreneurial mindset: survival mentality, passion, hard work, judgment, risk-taking, innovation. These are all internal factors they can control. The external factors are whether there are opportunities, whether there's a plan, there's an environment is good, whether you have team members and the conditions are ready, can be consumed. So if you look at this, as an overall universe of what it takes for you to go and create an entrepreneurial mindset. All right. Now I just want to touch a bit on creativity and innovation. I'll be ending very soon. What's the difference? Now, when we talk about entrepreneurship and startups, many governments started saying, yeah, we must teach creativity in school. All right. But we made a mistake down there. Governments also made a mistake. Creativity is about unleashing the potential of the mind. It's about curious mind, asking why not instead of why. Creative ideas can also be taught. Experiments in one person's mind. It's subjective and it's very hard to measure. Output of a creative class is going to be, or creativity is ideas. That's not a business. All right. Innovation, on the other hand, is about problem solving, and it's completely measurable. All right. It's about an analytical mind, about introducing tangible change. Make an idea viable by identifying an unrecognized and unmet need. Applies one creative resources, create a business model and a business with measurable returns. So output is a business out of an idea. So creativity gets you so far, but innovation gets you to the finish line. All right. So think of these two like that. So when you address these issues in the future, think innovation if you're thinking of the entrepreneurial mindset. All right. So creativity is about coming up with the idea. Innovation is about executing the idea, converting the idea into business. Ideas only get you so far. Outcome is intangible. And organizing capacity for innovation is creativity multiplied by execution. Remember this. Using multiplication rather than sum, because if either creativity or execution has a score of 0, then the capacity to innovate is 0. All right. Thomas Edison said very well, the greatest innovator of all time puts it where innovation is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. So perspiration is an innovation part. Inspiration is an idea part. All right. So it's both an art and science, innovative ideas and creative imagination, and then methodological execution to make the idea successful. All right. So remember, you'll always be part art and part science, and how do you make it happen? All right. What are the few things that you should think about entrepreneurs thinking? How do they think? What are the traits that they possess? I have in my book, summarized it into 10, not the typical that you see elsewhere, but I'll share with you. Entrepreneurs are contrarians. They challenge the conventional. And whether I started companies, whether I worked in a multinational or when I was politics, I did this. I was always a contrarian. I did not take yes, follow yes because someone said yes. They are courageous and fearless, very low level of fear. Risk takers, I mentioned, calculated risk, tenacious, determined, and stubborn. They do things first and assess later, which means don't overanalyze before you start. If you keep on analyzing, you'll never get started. All right, go and then assess later. You get more data and then move on and move on and move on. All right. Of course, they always are being mistaken as dreamers, but actually they are not dreamers. They envision a future that many people can't see, so they look like dreamers. Entrepreneurs are impatient, never satisfied, and get bored quite easily. Therefore, they need to be challenged all the time. They are competitive even when challenging big giants. So we have seen small companies start small, become very big, and they kill the big companies. All right, so they are very competitive. They don't mind starting small. Zero base is okay. Bill Gates and Zuckerberg will tell you they never thought they would be that billion or trillion dollar companies. Never. They were starting. They had some passion. They wanted to do something, and they became big later on. All right, and finally they love what they do, and they do what they love. And so passion is very important. All right. Now, the other way to look a bit about differentiate between a manager and an entrepreneur is an entrepreneur uses effectual logic, divergent thinking, whereas managerial thinking, normal person, use causal, is a convergent thinking. All right. So on the left is imagine a possible end using a set of means. Okay, these are my tools. I'm finding a possible end. Versus I have a goal. I have to develop a chair. I need wood, I need nails, and so on. So everything has been set for me. The goal has been set. Entrepreneur, the goal has not been set. You have a future that you look at. So look at it simply. Entrepreneurs are like a Lego set. You have all the pieces, no specific goal, and can end up with many possible solutions. Causal thinking like a jigsaw puzzle, only one outcome. The thing has been determined, and you're going to do that. You're going to achieve only one outcome. So entrepreneurs are effectual thinkers, divergent thinking versus convergent thinking. All right. And then on the right, I will not go through the comparison of the two. All right. So entrepreneurs, they think differently. This is what I call a special sense of gut feel, the ability to sense something that is not logical. All right. And the best way for them to make decisions is to also use the heart to think rather than depending on logic. And there's a lot of judgment, unstructured or fuzzy logic. And sometimes, in the initial stages, you must use judgment. When the company becomes big, you must use structure. So how do you balance these is a very important thing. I have one whole chapter in my book called Thinking with Your Heart and Not with Your Head. And that is a very important chapter because it teaches you how to think differently and understand why do entrepreneurs think the way that they think. All right. So it's almost like the yin and yang. So sometimes you have to use your heart more in the early stages. Once you become a bigger company, you have to use your logic more. And in my book, I analyze how Steve Jobs failed when the company became big. He was using his heart to think even when the company became big. Then when he came back second time to Apple, he learned how to balance and he created success for Apple that we see today. All right. So at conclusion, my last slide. The world is changing in many fronts, tremendous challenges. But I always believe as an entrepreneur, for every challenge, we'll have new opportunities. How can we navigate? We have to be proactive, agile, adaptive, investing in the skills, technology, and relationships in this rapidly changing. And we must continuously do that. All right. And every interested person can turn information to useful knowledge and economic and personal value. To do that, you need to have an innovative and resilient mindset. Tenacity, grit, creativity, innovation, nimble. In other words, be an entrepreneur. Think like one. Okay, thank you. Bye, everyone. Thank you.